Week's main news. ZEYNALOV family believe their son died after torture. Opposition activists deny the charge. Editors' Union reopens. Appell's court refuses to grant US activists torture appeal. NAKHCIVAN is Azerbaijan's testing laboratory for human rights abuses. Protest outside of Iranian embassy.
Turad Zeynalov of Arazin village in the Julfa region of the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic was buried on August 29th. He died in the Ministry of National Security of Nakhchivan. Human rights defenders attending the service were harassed by officials, including the mullah. Zeynalov's family refuted the ministry's claims that Turad had died of cancer. His brother Isa said that his brother was held in the National Security Ministry for several days, and that he had seen an ambulance come to the ministry on the morning of August 28th. "I ran to the ambulance and I saw my brother's body," he said. Turad's wife and father met him in the ministry on August 25th. When Turad came to meet them, he was wearing a bag on his head. "My son had been beaten. They wanted to force him to sign a statement saying he was a spy for Iran. He was limping. When I asked why, they said that they had pushed him," said Shuria Zeynalov, his father. Aside from the National Security Ministry of Nakhchivan, none of the local authorities nor any of the heads of Nakhchivan's law enforcement agencies are willing to comment on the incident. The reports from Nakhchivan say that Turad's relatives are being put under pressure to keep quiet about the death. 5 residents of Nakhchivan were arrested on August 24th and accused of spying for Iran. The next day, one of them, Turad Zeynalov, died. Relatives say that he was killed as a result of torture, but did not admit spying. The fate of the 4 others remain unknown. The National Security Ministry has officially recognized the death of Zeynalov, but claims that he was working as a spy for Iran and died of cancer when he was brought in for questioning. Today, Sabaya District Court held a hearing on the cases of 4 opposition activists arrested with regard to their participation in April 2 rally of Public Chamber opposition group. The defendants included Musavat Party Executive Administration Head Arif Hajili, Azerbaijan Popular Front Party Deputy Head Fuad Gahramanli, Musavat Party Youth Committee Chairman Tural Abbasli, and Popular Front Party Department Head Muhammad Majidli. The defendants, excluding Fuad Gahramanli, are being charged with violating social order and resisting police, and have been in pre-trial detention. Gahramanli, charged with violating social order, is committed to not leave the city. Lawyer Sabel Mustafayev informs that the defendant side lawyers filed several motions in the hearing. The motion requesting the judge to allow the defendants to sit next to their lawyers instead of observing the process behind bars was granted. However, the motions requesting the court to allow the journalists to film the hearing recognize violation of the innocence presumption of defendants by several parliamentarians and law enforcement agencies, and recognize violation of defendant Arif Hajili's right for defense, were denied. Defendant Arif Hajili also filed a motion requesting interrogation of Baku City Executive Power Head Hajibala Abutalibov in the trial as a witness. The motion was not heard and scheduled for consideration in future. Defendant Tural Abbasli's lawyer Ranar Gasamli filed motions requesting an explanation of the criminal charge brought against his client and interrogation of additional witnesses. The motion was not considered either. After a break, the prosecutor announced the indictment. The defendant side did not plead guilty and rejected the charges. They said that the indictment was not even clear. The trial will continue on September 5, 2011.
After a few years of non-activity, the Union of Editors has restored its operation. It relaunched today in a meeting at the IFAS Press Center and will now be working under the leadership of the news agency director Mehman Aliyev. Editors of multiple independent press outlets attended the event. Today's meeting discussed a criminal case against the Gündem Haber newspaper initiated by the press council, IFAS referendum Zeynalov's appeal to the press council, the assault of journalists in Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and new projects on the observation media kits. The press council should investigate the apples by the media rather than working against them. I was summoned to the Anti-Corruption Commission of the General Prosecutor's Office of the Republic of Azerbaijan after a complaint filed by the press council. The tax audit department has launched a criminal case against me on the charge of tax evasion and the abuse of power. I have submitted all the financial documents of the newspaper to both organizations. I have no idea which article provoked this, said Gündem Haber newspaper editor Shirin Jafarov. Editor of Gündelik Azerbaijan and AZERBAIJAN'S Azerbaijan newspapers, Emil Fatulayev, who spent 4 years in prison, said that this is a familiar story. The press council appealed to the National Security Ministry before I got sent to jail. The editors decided to appeal to the journalist trade union for an independent audit of Gündem Haber newspaper and the defense of the rights of newspaper staff along with material and legal assistance for journalists. Additionally, reports should be prepared on the legality of the actions of press council, the Minister of Taxes and the General Prosecutor's Office. The editor stated that the press council's current operation is not satisfactory. It was noted that Editors' Union should consider the apples and assess them in accordance with international norms. Praising the government is accepted as conforming to ethical rules. Criticism of the government is deemed a violation, said from news agency director Mehman Aliyev. The editors also commented on the press council's position on the article published in Yeni Azerbaijan newspaper about IRFA's director Emin Hüseyinov on June 17th. I was insulting the article published in this newspaper. I appealed to the president and the head of the presidential administration. I asked them whether the article published in Yeni Azerbaijan newspaper conformed with the ethics of media operations, said Hüseyinov. I appealed to the press council, but they defended the newspaper. The editors decided to examine the said article to ascertain whether it follows legal and ethical rules. They agreed to meet twice a month. Today, September 1st, Baku Appellate Court heard an appeal against 20 July 2011 decision of Sabah District Court on the lawsuit filed by jailed youth activist Bakhtiar Hajiev against General Prosecutor Office of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Hajiev claimed that he was subjected to torturing during the investigation on this case. Judge Gail Mamadov presided over the hearing. The hearing was announced closed to public and no reason was given. Thus, media representatives and members of the Defense Committee for the Youth Activists' Rights were not allowed into the court. The hearing was held without the presence of Hajiev's lawyers. The 2-hour process was concluded with the decision to not grant the appeal. The judge decided to uphold the ruling of Sabah District Court. Earlier in March 2011, an appeal was sent to General Prosecutor Office to investigate the fact of judicial violence committed against Hajiev in Izamir District Police Office of Ganja. However, the General Prosecutor Office dismissed the appeal. Defense Committee head Intigam Aliyev told that the decision was no surprise. According to him, this kind of appeals has no perspective, as the judicial system in Azerbaijan is not independent, and the prosecutor's office is also dependent on the authorities. Aliyev said that an appeal will be sent to European Court of Human Rights with regard to its treatment with Hajiev. Ganja City Court sentenced youth activist Bakhtiar Hajiev to 2 years in jail on May 18, 2011, charging with him dorking military service. It is widely thought that Hajiev was arrested for his activity on social networking sites and his support of the March 11 Great People's Day campaign. At a press conference today, the head of the Resource Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Nakhchivan, Melahat Nasibova, spoke about the appalling human rights situation and the hostile working conditions for journalists in Nakhchivan. Repressive methods are tested in Nakhchivan and then applied throughout Azerbaijan. For example, it was in Nakhchivan that people were first placed in psychiatric hospitals when they were caught protesting, and it was in Nakhchivan where the first kidnappings of journalists took place, she said. This time, a man has been killed in the Ministry of National Security for the first time. His name was ZEYNALOV. Nasibov called the case a sickening abuse of human rights and proposed the creation of a group of human rights defenders to monitor the situation in Nakhchivan. We need to apologize ZEYNALOV's murder and the case of the 4 Nakhchivan airport staff who are still in detention and were also tortured. All of them, including ZEYNALOV, were arrested without following legal protocol. It is impossible to get any comments or information from the state agencies in Nakhchivan. Staff at all levels abuse journalists and refuse to answer questions, said Nasibova. Those in attendance, including the members of the Editors' Union, strongly condemned the action of the National Security Minister of Nakhchivan. They called on the authorities of Nakhchivan to respect the law and respect human rights. The Editors' Union has decided to form a group of journalists and human rights defenders which will go to Nakhchivan to conduct research on the ground. Protesters met in front of the Iranian embassy for the second time this week, calling for officials to address environmental problems in Lake Urmia. The picket was organized by the local department of the World Congress of AZERBAIJAN'S with the participation of youth activists of Tagha and the Sabah branch of the Civil Solidarity Party. Dozens of protesters were there chanting slogans demanding that Lake Urmia be rescued from environmental disaster. Other slogans were more political. Let Azerbaijan be united with its capital in Tabriz. United Azerbaijan will save Urmia. Protesters told journalists that during the Lake Urmia protest in Iran, 500 activists were arrested and 7 people were killed as the protest was dispersed. None of the embassy staff met with protesters, and so they put their resolution into the embassy mailbox. The protest lasted for several minutes before the police drove them from the embassy building, but no one was detained. Iranian embassy has not yet commented on the picket.
İran Şura Məclisinin verdiyi qərara əsasən